They told me it wasn't no catching up, but just like it wasn't no room in the caddy, I had to lap them up. Now I'm in the gym doing 2-a-days. Push, push. Now I'm in the gym doing 2-a-days. Push, push.
And I'm getting money in any way. All I know is going getting paid. My moving weight like every day. Now I'm in the gym doing 2-a-days.
I'm in the gym doing 2-a-days. Push, push. I'm in the gym doing 2-a-days.
Let's run it up.
Guys, welcome to the Run Up the Score podcast. This is Carl Reed. I got my younger brother stepping in today as my guest co-host today. And we got on a very special guest today, a very good friend of ours, the head coach of the Grand Rapids Drive, Donnie Tyndall. Donnie, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Coach. That younger brother of yours, he's a workhorse, man. You know me. I had some tough dudes in my day coaching in college, but I don't know if I had any as tough as Drake Reed. That dude was a warrior.
Appreciate it.
I taught him everything he knows.
Big brother, you got to, right?
Yeah, no question. So, Donnie, we're gonna jump right into it. We know you got a really raw deal on this show cause, and the show cause penalty is really the harshest penalty that you can get in college basketball or college athletics. It's really kind of an unfair deal, you know, when I think about it, the magnitude of it, 10 years. Can you kind of go into that a little bit and kind of explain where everything is at and how you got to move forward?
Yeah, you know, Coach, obviously it's one of those situations where if the AD at Tennessee stays behind me and supports me, I probably literally get a 6 or 8 game suspension and I'm still the coach at Tennessee. But when you go into that committee hearing and you don't have a school or a university president backing you, they just tee off on you. And that's what happened to me. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I had some dark days that first year or two, and you keep asking yourself, man, why would this happen to me? But at the end of the day, you just have to believe God has a plan. I'm on this path now trying to get to the NBA and enjoying the G League immensely and doing what I love to do, which is to be back in the gym, coaching young people like your younger brother, Drake, and trying to help guys achieve their goals and dreams along the way. So that's my focus at this point in time.
So Drake and I know you very well and kind of know your path, but could you kind of give our listeners a little bit of your journey, where your first coaching job was and the different stops you've made that have led you to the G League?
Yeah, you know, I started off, I played a year of junior college basketball before I signed and went to Morehead State and finished my career there. And I went back to Iowa Central to be a junior college assistant for Coach Dennis Pilcher, who I played for. Coach Pilcher ended up winning over 800 games. He's like the junior college Bobby Knight, you know. And so I learned a ton from him. He gave me a lot of freedom to grow and develop as a coach. I was with him for 2 years. And then I got the head junior college job at St. Catherine College in Springfield, Kentucky. Small little junior college. We had 200 students at the school, and I got the job June 1st, Carl, and recruited a team that ended up going 30-5, went to the national tournament for the first and only time in the history of the school. And from there, went to LSU with John Brady as an assistant coach. I was the youngest assistant coach in the SEC at the time. And Coach Brady, who's an amazing coach, took a team to the Final Four, was a great mentor to me and gave me my first opportunity in Division I. And then I went with Kermit Davis to Middle Tennessee. Kermit and I had worked together as assistants at LSU, and I went with Kermit as his associate head coach for 4 years, and we helped turn that program around, get that thing on track, and been a great mentor to me. Kermit's an outstanding coach as well now at Ole Miss and doing a great job there. And then from there, I was lucky enough to get the job at Morehead State in the Ohio Valley Conference, where I played, and I had some great games with my man Drake right there, and won a lot of games. For 6 years I was there, went to Southern Miss for 2 years, and then had 2 great years there. Was fortunate to get the Tennessee job, was the youngest head coach in the SEC at that time at 43. and was just there a year. Unfortunately, lost that due to NCAA stuff at Southern Miss, and have started my NBA path, if you will. I went with Jerry Stackhouse, was his lead assistant for the 905 team. We won the championship 4 years ago, working with him. And then when Coach Casey got this job, I came to Grand Rapids as an assistant last year, and then this past season as the head coach. So it's amazing. I grew up in Grand Rapids, guys, and to come full circle, growing up here, going to high school, be in the South for all those years, and then back home to Grand Rapids. And fortunately for me, my mom, dad, sister are still right here, so it's been pretty cool.
Okay.
So, Coach, with the G League, it's a huge developmental league, and you were with Stackhouse when you guys won the league. How is it balancing winning the G League versus the job of developing the guys to get them ready for the NBA team?
Well, I would say without question, the organization's focus and priority, 80-20, is to develop the young guys. We're a minor league team for a reason. That's for player development. That's for guys to get playing experience. Maybe you're rehabbing an injury. Maybe you just aren't getting the minutes you hope at that level. So you come down and spend some time with us to get some game minutes, etc. So that's the most important thing. We had a guy that Drake played with in France, was our rookie this year, Sekou, who was a first-round pick, only 18 years old when we got him, and thought that maybe we'd have him all year. We ended up only having him for about 15 games. We progressed maybe a little further ahead than we thought he would be or could be. And then he goes up to the Pistons and had some nice flashes. So in that aspect, you're doing your job. We had Dante Hall, an undrafted rookie from Alabama, who we developed over the course of the year. Late in the season, got 2 straight 10-day contracts with the Pistons. So when you're doing those types of things, it lends itself to people saying, well, hey, he's doing his job. On the flip side, like I've told our players from day one, I try to win in everything I do. I don't care if I'm playing my daughters in checkers. I'm trying to whip their tail, and that's just who I am. And I think part of guys developing and growing and getting better is learning how to win. And some of them have come in and understand and know how to win, and some of these guys have never really won at a high level, and so you're teaching them to do that, and that's part of their growth and development. So I think it's all encompassing, but the biggest thing is to develop these guys and get them ready so when they do go up with the Pistons, they're ready to step right in and contribute.
Now, I remember when Drake and you were talking, because his teammate from France was going to go over there and play in the G League. Drake, how was the development or the difference, if you will, of a guy adjusting from going to Europe to going over into playing the G League and the NBA, because he was a first-round pick? And Drake, did you know that he was going to be a pro from the time you saw him play in France?
I knew he was going to have a chance. The first week or two, I was like, man, this dude, he going to have a chance. But about halfway through the season, it was like, all right, if he keeps on this pace in another year or two, for sure, he'll be a first round pick, because he just had the body and he had the maturity. And I've been around those type of guys before, so I know that. But as far as the development goes, nothing's going to beat the States, man. One of the main issues that guys in Europe and anywhere outside the country have is they just don't have the coaching and the training from an early age. Most of them don't have any understanding of, the off season is not for vacation. It's for really, you got to have a team of coaches, man, strength coach, a skills coach, whatever your weaknesses are. They don't have a concept of that over here. And then their school is different. Like, their school is longer than our school. So they might be in school, like they still in school like now, So that's different. And then and also you don't have the coaching staff like most teams have one or two, not two coaches, and a lot of the assistants never played before. So you have a lot of guys that really don't understand, how to teach, how to really take your game from point A to point B. And some countries have better skill coaches, like the Hispanic countries like Spain and Italy and Argentina. they have better skills training, but they don't have weight training. So when you watch these guys watch the Olympics, they have no definition in their arm and things like that. Well, when you get to the States, whether that's college or pro, everyone's chiseled. Everyone's doing explosive workouts and stuff. So it's going to take them a year or two to get used to that, and things are a lot lighter for them mentally. A lot of the coaches bail them out when things get hard, or if somebody gets up into them, they do things to try to make them comfortable. And in the States, it's just not that way. It's like if someone senses weakness in you, they're going to attack you immediately. So that's just basketball stuff, But then you have the off the court problems as well. You go into a new culture. Most guys learn the language pretty easily because they already know 2 or 3 languages. But you take a kid like Sekou, he grew up in Africa, and then he moves to France. So he already had to get adjusted to France. Now he has to move to the States, and that's another adjustment. So it's, it's usually, I would imagine it would probably take 2 or 3 years for most of those guys to get adjusted. And then the mentality of an American society is so much different than other places. Like, I've lived in 6 different countries. I've been to 26 different countries. And everyone thinks quite differently than the United States because we're capitalists. And when you're capitalist, you can't afford to be average, and you can't afford to take a day off. Whereas the other places, like here is a socialist country, so they could take a day off and they're going to get unemployment. They're going to get a bunch of things to bail them out. Whereas in the States, man, if you don't bring it every day and you're not at the top every day, then you have nothing. So it brings a level of intensity that most guys are just not used to.
So let me ask you this. So I got you both guys here. And Donnie, we deal with this in recruiting a lot, as I see a lot of young guys that are chasing the biggest stage they can be on. Now, when you were at Morehead State and Drake was playing at Austin Peay, you guys had some really, really good teams. You took a team with Kenneth Fareed and won a game, I think, in the NCAA tournament that year. And Kenneth ended up being a first-round pick. You had Drake at Austin Peay, guys like Lester Hudson that was at UT Martin. From a coaching standpoint, Steve Prohm ended up going to Iowa State. Mick went to Cincinnati, and now he's at UCLA, Mick Cronin. You ended up at Southern Miss and then Tennessee. How important is it for young coaches and young players to understand that even at that mid-major in the Ohio Valley Conference, you can end up reaching all the goals and the dreams you have if you do really well at that level?
Well, no question about it. I think just like think about it like this: the Pistons want their young guys that aren't playing a lot to come to the G League and do what? Play, get game experience, right? Well, Drake could have played it about anywhere in the country. Kenneth Fareed could have played anywhere in the country. But if they go to Kentucky or Tennessee or Michigan out of high school, they maybe don't play much until they're a junior, and their game doesn't evolve and develop because they haven't got that game experience. Drake Reed went to Austin Peay. He's the best player at Austin Peay as a freshman. Kenneth Fareed goes to Morehead State. He's the best player at Morehead State as a freshman. So now they're playing starter minutes. Their role is a star or starter at least role. They're finding themselves. Their game is developing. And they end up being, all Americans and great players at their respective schools. So you can achieve a lot anywhere, but you really get the opportunity to go and develop and play at a low to mid-major place earlier in your career if you're one of those unique guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. As you just mentioned, there's some great coaches at that level, guys that are going to end up being at high major places someday. And you get a chance to showcase your skills and get that game experience from day one. There's a lot to be said for that, as you know.
Drake, do you feel like it was a great opportunity for you being able to go into Austin Peay and just play a lot, as opposed to having to fight for minutes somewhere else?
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things we were really looking at is working I go in and get those minutes right away because we were seeing that a lot of guys were having success coming from mid-majors during that time. And that was one of the things, okay, we can look at these bigger schools, but, they're not really committed to put me on the floor right away. Whereas, these mid-major schools are like, all right, we're going to put you in right away. So When we start seeing guys get drafted from mid-majors, it was like, okay, well, we could do that from here too. So let's take a look at that.
And so, Donnie, as you're recruiting from the different levels to Morehead, to Southern Miss, to Tennessee, how much does the way you recruit change? And not just in terms of talent of the player, but does your strategy change? Does your system change? Does your ideology change as you go up levels? Or are you still basically looking for the same kind of kid, maybe a little more talented, but with the same mental attributes that you look for your whole way up, starting from junior college?
Yeah, you know, Coach, that's a great question. I think it obviously is going to be based on who you are as a head coach, what your personality is. Are you an offensive guy? Are you a defensive guy? Are you a guy that loves skilled players? You know, for me, the most important talent, the most important skill for me was toughness. You know, if you weren't tough, you weren't going to be able to play for me. You weren't going to be able to impact our program, regardless of how skilled you were or how athletic you were. You had to be tough. So every step that I went up, nothing changed in regard to the number one most important thing being toughness. With that being said, certainly you were able at Morehead State to sign a 6'2" to 6'4" wing. You get to Southern Miss, it's 6'4" to 6'6" wing. At Tennessee, you're recruiting 6'7", 6'8" wing. So the size and the talent level increased each step. But for me, the most important thing was still toughness. And then after that, you go into, can a guy pass, shoot, handle the ball? Can a guy lead? Is he a vocal leader? Is he a guy that has the intangibles you like? How physical he is, et cetera, based on his position. So it all probably is predicated on who you are as a head coach. For me, I never went away from the formula that worked for me, which was toughness and physicality. I didn't necessarily worry about having a prototypical 6'8" power forward. If a dude was 6'5", but he was tough as nails, I'd roll with him, you know? And so that was me. Obviously, the talent level does go up each step, but again, physical, tough, aggressive dudes, that was our MO, and that's who I rolled with. And if I ever went back to college, it wouldn't change. I think toughness wins you a lot of games, and it helps guys that maybe are a little out of position or undersized for their position, find a role and find a way to the floor.
Is it tougher now being in the pros when you're not recruiting and picking those guys yourself, and they're kind of telling you, or they are telling you rather, who you're going to be coaching? Is it tougher to find that toughness and those attributes? Do you have to kind of motivate those guys a different way?
Well, it is different without question, because you don't recruit your team. With that being said, my general manager here, John Phelps, does a great job, and he and I are really kind of locked hand in hand or arm in arm, if you will, on the type of dudes that we like. But then the Pistons front office is going to send us their players. And so at this level, they really do look for a certain size at a certain position. They really do look for certain athletic traits for a guy at certain positions. And so toughness is definitely important, but it's not the be all and end all. Your length, your physical size, your athleticism, your skill level for your position are all just as important or more important than to NBA organizations. So you're not going to pick the same type of dudes you maybe would pick on your college team and them have a chance to play for you at this level. A lot of times that just isn't the case. I do think, as the second part of your question, finding ways to motivate guys and get them to play with more physicality, with more toughness, is a really, really big key or component of being successful at this level. I'll give you an example. You know, my teams, if you ask Drake Reed, my teams at Morehead State and Southern Miss, what would they embody? He would say, oh man, they were tough, they were physical, they defended, and they rebounded the ball. And then offensively, they shared it and they played unselfishly. Well, fortunately for me, our team bought into that, and we were number one in the league in defense this year. We were number one in the league in rebounding, and we We were #1 in the league in assist percentage. So we played the right way. Now, I don't know if we were the best team in the league. We were going to be a playoff team without question, but we played the right way. And again, back to your question, did I have to motivate some guys a different way than maybe I would have done in college to get them to buy in and do that? Absolutely. It's more talking, it's more teaching, it's more film watching at this level than it is in college, where it's just, hey, I'm the coach, do what I told you to do, end the story, you know? And so I do think I've grown as a coach in that regard. I do think as these guys being professionals in many instances are grown men, they need to be handled and should be handled a little differently. And I'd like to think we did that this year. Is it challenging at times? Absolutely. Today's day and age, these kids, these young men want to know, why are we doing this? How does this benefit me? How is this going to improve me as a player? And you need to have answers for them. Where in, 15, 20 years ago, hey, be quiet. I don't want to hear your question. Just do it. Well, that's not the case at this level anymore.
Guys, with AAU basketball, it's always been, for the last few decades, so important in the summer basketball, the shoe company deals, the camps. Have you ever have Donnie, from you first, and then I'm gonna have a question for Drake. Do you ever feel like the shoe company's involvement in recruiting is too over the top, in terms of kids wanting to go to Adidas schools because they were with Adidas teams, or Nike schools because they were with Nike teams? Do you think sometimes that plays too big of a factor? It should kids be looking at more where they're fitting instead of what shoes they're going to wear? And how do you handle that as a coach if you really want a kid that's on another shoe company sponsored team? Yeah,
Drake, you want to answer that one? I'll follow you.
Man, I think man, so much comes down to your representation, man. Like if you're in high school, you Nike, Adidas, you're just thinking about the shoes and what looks cooler and stuff. A lot of times, guys 16, 17 years old, he doesn't know anything about business at that point. And a lot of guys' families don't know anything about that as well. So imagine, you got a bulk of the players that are coming from poverty-stricken situations, whether they're American players or foreign players, and they just don't get it, and you can sit down there and talk to them a bunch, but if people don't have that mentality and they don't understand it, they're getting a crash course. Recruiting is a crash course. Then you talking about shoe companies, that's a crash course, and you don't really get it until later when either you spend all the money or you find out that you got the right people to help you handle it. So, yeah, in a perfect world, most people should look at exactly where they fit and what's the next best move. But at the same time, if a company is going to put you in position to also get to the league, and that's the ultimate goal for everybody for the most part, then that plays a major factor as well. So it's something that now with how things are run, it's like the business has infiltrated, into a more of a public eye. More people know about it, more people talk about it now. But still, at the same time, there's a lot of mistakes that can be made.
Yeah, I would add to that, Coach. When I was at Moorhead in Southern Miss, we never recruited guys based on us getting a player from Nike or Adidas or Under Armour. As you get to Tennessee, and I was just there 1 year, those things were going to start coming into play. And, I think the biggest thing is you're not going to change it. It is what it is in regard to everybody in the business knows that the high level players are getting pushed to certain programs and certain schools based on what AAU shoe company they're affiliated with. Sometimes they end up with, say they're an Adidas school, AAU team, they go to the Adidas school. Once in a while, that's not the case, and they end up somewhere else. But there's so much, leverage and bargaining and different things going on, starting with these kids in 9th, 10th grade to get them on certain AAU teams that are certain shoe affiliated, so they end up at a certain university. I mean, that's been going on for 30, 35, 40 years now, as you guys know, and it's not going to change. There's too much money involved, and even with all this stuff that comes out with FBI, it's still not going to change. It's going to continue to happen, and it is what it is. So I think the biggest thing is, unfortunately, you see some kids' careers that don't flourish or end up bottoming out because they make a decision solely based on the sneaker company's recommendation, and they don't do what Drake just suggested, which is to look at the best situation for you. They're just caught up in going with a certain shoe company school, and then they don't make the best decision, or they get caught up in it and leave early because the shoe company thinks they're a first-round pick, and they don't end up being a first-round pick. And now they're in the G League a year or two and never get their call-up or their opportunity. So many things come into it, Carl, as you know, Drake, as you know, and it's not going to change. It really isn't. We can talk about it and sling mud at it and all the things people have done the last couple of years, but it is what it is.
So with those thought processes, if I'm a 6'5" 10th grader and it looks like I'm going to be pretty good, right? What's the most important thing for me? Is it the AAU team I pick? Is it the high school I go to? Is it who trains me? Is it who I allow to be around in my inner circle? What's the most important things? If you're talking to Drake or Donnie, if you're talking to a kid and a parent at that age, before they really get into whatever avenue they're going to go to, what's the most important things and what should be coming first?
Well, I mean, like Drake said earlier, everyone's end goal is to get in the NBA. That's obviously so unrealistic for 99% of all the players playing high school basketball. So I really think if you have a good circle of people around you, a good high school coach, a good AAU coach, a good mentor that is trying to guide you, the very first thing is going to be, what is a guy's graduation rate as a head coach? If I go to this gentleman's school, am I going to have a legit chance to graduate and leave with a degree? So when the basketball does stop bouncing, I have a backup plan, a fallback plan on what I'm going to do with my life. That's the most important thing. Secondly is, where do I fit in regard to playing and being a major contributor? We're looking at the roster. Who's ahead of you at your position? What position are they telling you you're going to play? And where do you fall in the pecking order in regard to possibly being able to play like a Drake Reed did early in your career versus maybe being a role guy or not playing much at all until you're a junior or late in your sophomore year type of deal? Thirdly, can you win? Are you going to win? Has that coach / program won before? Because as Drake would attest to, probably the biggest thrill, or one of the biggest thrills in his basketball career, is playing in the NCAA tournament. There's nothing, more gratifying or enjoyable than going to the NCAA tournament. So are you going to graduate? Do you have a chance to play early and often? And are you going to win? Those are three things that I think are very, very important. And it's not always about the highest level, the biggest conference, the most TV games. Those three things, in my mind, if you got the right circle of people around you, coach, are things that you have to think about and consider early on.
So 3 letters that have been getting thrown around a lot lately are NIL, name, image, and likeness. And the NCAA put something out a couple weeks ago in terms of letting players explore some opportunities, but there's still kind of some language in it that's not going to let them have free market. What are both of your guys' thoughts on whether or not the players should be able to earn market and income through their name, image, and likeness? And what do you think is the best way for them for that to be structured?
You want to go first or me?
Go ahead, Drake. You go ahead.
I think the main thing now is they better figure it out and start find a way to get these kids some money, or they're going to lose. They're going to lose out on key guys for many, many years to come. One of the first things I noticed when I started playing overseas is that, these guys, 16, 17-year-old pros, and some of them are making 50, 60 grand, and this was 10 years ago. And I was like, man, if I could have made that in college, and, these guys are still draft eligible, but if our guys, if somebody pays for a plane ticket for them to go home see their mom, they ineligible for a few games. But you got some guys, and it doesn't matter what they get over here. If they get any kind of compensation whatsoever, even if it's not, 5 figures or something like that, they're getting something. To whereas, the things that you get nothing in the States other than, your basic room and board and some couple benefits. But you're talking about guys that are basically like we've sold out almost all of our games for 2-3 years in a row when I was playing in college. And, I think they could do a lot of different things, man. I think one thing that they could do is I know guys get like Pell Grant and different things like that. If they could find something to where they could give them a certain stipend or whatever to where they can have a down payment for a house when they get done playing college, to where they can have something towards like a Roth IRA or something towards retirement. They should have several accounts of things set up that I wouldn't just give a kid straight cash at that point and without him knowing how to use it, because the kids are gonna blow through it. They'll go buy a TV, they'll go buy some rims for their car, something stupid. Put them in a couple of classes to where they can understand how to utilize that money, and then give them some accounts to where when they're done with college, whenever that is, they have something there that's already set in stone, that's tangible, the things that really matter, like towards a house, something towards retirement, something interest growing account, some stocks, some bonds and things like that. And then if you give them the education along with that, then you'll set a kid up for a good start out in life. But I think they need to start doing that. And they're really behind. And what's going to end up happening is kids are just going to start going straight pro. They're going overseas now. And now with the G League doing what they're doing, they're going in there. And, how can you blame a kid for doing that? I'm over here in Europe and I see kids getting paid, on professional contracts. They're 18, 19 years old and they can still get drafted. So our kids can't get that, and so I just don't. I don't see why they can't get that done.
Donnie, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, my take on it is I think it's long overdue. You're talking about just what Drake said. We had a kid, Kenneth Freed at Morehead State, who's the best player in the history of the school. His mom is living in the projects in Newark, New Jersey, and has lupus, bad health issues his whole time. A couple times we thought we were going to lose her while he was in school. And there's nothing he can do to help his mom out back home yet. He's got the number 35 Morehead State jersey in the Morehead bookstore, and they're selling 25 or 30 of those a day, and he gets nothing, no cut of it. So I think it's long overdue for young guys like that. My concern, if I was a college coach or an assistant coach, would be, okay, you got Kenneth Freed at Morehead, you got Drake Reed at Austin Peay. Yeah, those guys should definitely be getting something like Drake said, whether it's some retirement account money, whether it's some stocks and bonds, whether it's just a stipend per month. I don't know, but what about the 12th man at Morehead State, or what about the 10th man at Austin Peay? How much do they get? Do they get the same stipend as Kenneth Freed or Drake Reed, or does Drake Reed and Kenneth get the same stipend as Anthony Davis when he's at the University of Kentucky? So Now it becomes a recruiting bargaining chip. Okay, it's already tough enough to beat some schools in recruiting, but now if they can offer more of a stipend or a larger stipend compared to what you're able to do or give at your particular school, now how does all that come into play? So in my opinion, this G League deal has pushed the NCAA to expedite the process, try to say they're going to do something. But I'd be shocked, excuse me again, I'd be shocked if at the end of the day, they do it within the next 3 to 5 years. I think they'll drag their feet, prolong it, and this will go from supposedly going to be in the works in a year to all of a sudden 3, 4, 5 years go by and they still don't have a concrete plan or way of going about it. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but that's my take. I think it's just going to be another cluster of issues / problems to deal with, and I think it's deserved by the young kids. I do, but who gets it, who doesn't, etc. Those are going to be big questions that need to be answered.
So Donnie, my question, another question I got to follow up with that is, a couple weeks ago, Jalen Green from Prolific Prep in California, he was down to what it looked like was going to be Memphis and Auburn, and he decided to sign with the G League. It was a $500K contract. As the college coach in that situation, how are you recruiting through that situation with that now being an option for those guys? Do you think that's a good option for the players? And is there anything that can be done so colleges maybe can identify who those guys are that have those opportunities, so you don't waste a year recruiting a guy that's going to be in that position?
Well, I think it's a great option, first of all, Coach. I think it's a great option for a young player because what was happening, as you know, kids were leaving and going to Australia and China and different places like that because they were going to be well compensated and they just didn't want to go to school. And that's everybody's right in their prerogative. If they don't want to go to school or they're worried about getting hurt and they have no interest in going to college, why not let a kid go make good money in China or Australia and do what he loves to do, which is play the game? What I think the NBA and G League people were saying is, look, these kids are going out of our country. Now we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to fly across the world and evaluate them and scout them. Every organization in the NBA is doing that. Why shouldn't we just try to keep them here, pay them in the same ballpark money-wise what they would be making in China or Australia, and keep them here? Now they can play against great competition, have NBA-type coaching, and be able to be scouted on a nightly basis by the NBA, which is where they all want to be in a year anyway. So I think it's a great option for a young person, first and foremost. My guess or resolution or solution idea would be, if a young man signs with an NCAA institution, he's no longer allowed to go to the G League on the elite team for the big money. If he chose to go to Australia or China, okay, nothing you can do about that. But I think it would make it a little bit easier on the college coaches to know, okay, now this kid didn't sign in the fall period and we're recruiting him in the spring, but we also understand there's a realistic opportunity that this guy's going to go to the G League for big money. And now you kind of prepare yourself, if you will, for that blow that could happen. But if he signs in the early period in November or he signs in the late period with you, now the G League option's off the table. I think that would probably be a happy medium for these people. And I think the NBA has always had a good relationship working with college coaches and the NABC, et cetera. I think that's probably what will end up playing out down the road. Now, is that in a year? Is that in 4 or 5 years? I don't know. But I do think at least it would help the college coaches and programs prepare themselves a little bit better for this type of deal. But I think it's a great opportunity. What's the difference for a kid getting to pick $500,000 and stay in the States and play for NBA coaches, or go to China and be away from his family and all that for a year? So I think it's a great option for these young kids to have.
So, Drake, I got one last question for you, and then I'm gonna ask one last one to Donnie. Drake, if I was a young basketball player, like I said, I'm a young kid with talent. I got goals of playing Division I basketball. I eventually want to be a professional. What advice would you have, and what do you feel like is key? Things that can't be compromised for a kid to be in the position to reach those goals.
Well, now when I get those type of questions, man, it took me a while to figure it out, but I say it's three things that no matter what field in life that you're in, what industry you're in, it's going to take for you to maximize your earnings and maximize your opportunities. Is number one, you have to have the talent. Okay, like you can want to be a great basketball player all you want, but if you can't play, if you're not athletic enough, if you're not tall enough, if you're not gifted enough, you're not going to be able to do it. The next thing is you got to have the proper work ethic. If you don't work at least as hard as the people that's actually doing it, then you might make it off your talent, but you're not going to excel and you're not going to survive there. And then the third thing is you have to have a network. So you have to have the right coaches. You have to have the right representation. You have to have all of the key players that handle the business side and the things behind the scenes to put you in position to be there. So you can be the best player in the world, man, that nobody knows about. I just was in Senegal over the New Year's break, and I saw two kids that was 15, 16 years old. They 6'9", and they could play. They could be playing basically any D1 school in the country, but they over in a small village in Senegal. So much depends, like I said, on your network. Nobody knows about them, but that's what it comes down to for the most part. You can train all you want to and be as great as you want to, but you got to be in the right venues. You got to get that exposure. You have to be somewhere where your talent can codify, man, and be around the right type of people. A lot of it comes down to the people you hang out with. Like when I was in school, if you didn't work hard or if you was getting in trouble and things like that, I would be an introvert. I wouldn't even hang out. You would only see me at practice if you was like that, But you have to know that what you want to do in your life. And I tell people, don't even just think about college. What do you want from the game? What kind of life do you want to live when you're 40 or you're 50 years old? And then what that does is that helps you make easier decisions for this moment in time. Well, if I do this, then when I'm 40, I'm not going to have that house. I'm not going to have the long career that I want. I'm not going to have the money in the bank that I want. And it makes your decisions that much easier because you're not looking at just today. You're looking at the next, 10, 20 years. And so, those are some of the things that I would say to a high school kid is, find a way to where you can use the game just as much as the game is going to use you.
So, Donnie, my question for you is: you're a young coach. You fresh out of college. You have aspirations. You want to be a coach on the collegiate level, maybe even the professional level. What are important things that young coaches need to be doing in order to make sure that they have an opportunity to advance in the profession?
Well, I use this line when I talk to young coaches and they say, coaches, is there one thing you could tell me that would really help me? And this is the line I use. Don't position yourself, prepare yourself. And by that, I mean, as you're trying to move up the ranks, do you have to network? Absolutely. That's a big part of it. You got to meet people. You got to follow up with handwritten notes. You got to network and go work camps in the summer and build a group of people that, and they know you and they know what you're about. That's important. But I've seen so many people over the years that have networked and they follow up and they do all this stuff to get a job. And then they can't do the job. They can't do the job. They can't handle it. They're not prepared. And so what I tell people is, when you position yourself and you're doing all the networking and all the stuff that is important, don't get me wrong, but you're not preparing yourself. You're not doing the same things as a coach that Drake Reed just said. you got to do as a player. You know, are you putting the extra time in? Are you studying film? Are you watching other coaches and learning how to teach? Are you practicing your teaching and understanding how important it is to be able to verbalize it and articulate it in the right way to you know, motivate young people? So many things come into being a good coach. Are you preparing yourself so you can teach and coach, or are you just kind of networking and maneuvering to put yourself in a position to get a job? Now you get the job and shoot, you're not ready to go because you're not prepared. So that's my thing. And I see it a lot. You know, you see so many kids these days that they can do 8 million things on the computer, and they're gifted in that regard, and they know a bunch of people because they email and they text and they follow up and they do all those things. But shoot, they've never got on the court and taught. They've never got on the court and coached and motivated and handled people and made them be accountable and challenged them when needed, chewed their butt when they need it. And so they have all these physical, tangible skills on a computer and in the film room, and they're networked in to get their job, but they never really taught or coached. And so preparing yourself to be a coach is the most important thing. And a lot of times preparing yourself is going to be way more important than positioning yourself, because if you're good at what you do, the right people are going to see it, and eventually you'll get the position you hope for most of the time. So that would be my main piece of advice to young people trying to get in the profession.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you both coming on today and joining us. I think you gave a lot of great information out. We really appreciate you coming on, and I'll holler at both you guys later on.
All right. Appreciate you having us.
All right. Thanks, Donnie.
Take care of yourself, Donnie. Do your thing, baby.
Yeah, Coach, if I could just say one more thing, man. You know, as the years go by, and you know, you've been a coach and you've competed at a high level a lot of times, you always appreciate your own players. But I'm not just saying this because he's here, but your brother has my utmost respect. He was a flat out warrior, a high level competitor, and I've told him this, but I'll say it right in front of you. If he wants to get into coaching someday and I can help him, I damn sure will try to help that young guy.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you. We appreciate it. I'm hoping that he gets into coaching too. He's got some things on his mind. I'm hoping that he decides to give back to the game, and so I'm gonna try to twist his arm on it a little bit.
Good stuff. Well, I appreciate you guys.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thanks, guys.